at this rate, I think I should just leave. Like, they've said everything that needs to be, like, said. And I actually thought Manoj, being a professor at GIBS, would actually start with the academic definition, right, of misinformation. But I'll help you in that regard. So, by definition, it actually is false or inaccurate information that actually focuses on getting the facts wrong. As in then disinformation is actually a subset of misinformation, but that's actually to deliberately mislead people. So with that being said, I agree with both Manoj and Toby, like 100%, right? I think particularly when we're looking at the current political atmosphere globally, so as you keep mentioning, half of the world is voting this year. But if we actually put that into actual numbers, that's 50 countries that are actually voting this year and 1.8 billion people that are actually going to the polls. That's a huge number of people that are actually going to the polls. And I think to Toby and Manoj's point is, majority of people don't actually understand the influence that they are actually receiving from a lot of the screen time that they're actually sitting and possessing. I know on average, myself, I'm sure I spend like 2 hours on my phone a day, not necessarily social media.
Well done.
High five.
Thank you. But with that being said though, can I actually ask, are there any people that aren't actually on social media here? Can I be your best friend? Yeah. Like there's only one person, right? I'm going to say in a room of roughly 50 people. And that for me actually says a lot. Currently my parents are in the Eastern Cape, rural Eastern Cape. And they were actually, so my mom is a chief in the village. And I know she had a town hall last week and they were actually talking about the elections. And it was actually quite interesting to actually find out that a majority of the old women and men in that particular village want to actually vote for Mandela's party. They actually don't even know who the current president of South Africa actually is.
Sure.
And that is actually extremely scary because it's not just one village, it's actually 8 villages around there that were actually at this particular town hall. And they really do not know who our current president is. So these are the same people who are unfortunately are then going to go to the polls on the 29th of May and perpetuate their voting biases and or stereotypes based on whatever information they've previously gained to actually get them to where we currently are, right? With that being said, unfortunately, yes, the rise of social media and digital platforms has kind of perpetuated the spread of disinformation. And I think in that regard, for us, from a data perspective, one of our biggest things is deepfakes, to what Manoj was actually saying, which is a hyper-realistic media version, whether it's in text or voice, video or images, that actually realistically mimics either the movements or features of a face or body of a voice, like faithfully, intrinsically from a voice perspective. And as you said, for me, that's actually very scary because I was reading recently that there's a number of financial services companies that are actually happy that they actually have legacy systems compared to some of the new fintechs because of being laggards in a number of the technologies. They have not actually implemented biometric verification, and that has actually saved them from a lot of the deep fake fraud that's actually taken place in recent
like voice calls?
Yes.
Wow.
So like in the US, in 2022 to 2023, there was a 700% increase in deepfake fraud in the financial services industry. And in UK, this is according to the UK Finance magazine, and they actually do a lot of research and surveys. They were actually saying that for UK and the financial industry, they've actually seen a 40% loss just from deepfake fraud. And the majority of that is authorization push fraud, which then is either voice and or video instructions that they actually receive from their customers to actually make financial transactions on their behalf. So like another example, I think it was on CNN in February this year, they actually showed, I think it was an article, and then they actually did the report on it. There's a company in Hong Kong where the financial employee was actually informed by the CFO via video conference call to actually transfer $25 million to a supplier's account, or to find out that actual video conference was not the actual CFO. It was a deepfake video of the actual CFO. And this is actually happening a lot more, particularly in Europe and in the US than the global south. But those are losses that are actually very evident. And then when you actually then think about it, right, we need to actually look at the actual impact of these. As you mentioned, either from a financial, societal, legal, and technology perspective. And I think one of the other things we also need to look at is crime as a service. So where you're actually getting criminals that actually sell access to tools, knowledge, and information and technology in order to actually increase cyber and technological crimes. So basically, as we all know, criminals are normally at the forefront of actually learning a lot of these technologies, like in the beginning, and law enforcement are actually lagging behind that. So they are early adopters and implementers of the said technologies. And the fact that they are even making money out of this, like literally it's crime as a service, so that they can actually perpetuate things such as automated hacking and adverse deepfakes and machine learning. So to Manoj's point with regards to like some of the recommendations, how we can actually resolve this, I totally agree with regards to transparency, right? But I think it needs to even start at stakeholder collaboration, where we actually are involving the digital platform owners, civil society, government, and us even as users, because majority of the time it's our data that they are actually using to create the data sets as inputs into the actual algorithms and models that they actually are creating. So we need to come together and actually create some sort of fact-checking framework and collaborative efforts, so we are at the forefront of actually picking up disinformation at the beginning. So also agree with transparency, right? I think everybody wants to know who has their data, why they have their data, what their data has actually been used for, because that always then becomes the issue is a lot of our data is literally, you post anything today, it lives on the internet forever. You can never actually delete it. But you actually don't know who actually then picks up that data and what they actually utilize it for. So as much as, yes, we've got regulatory authorities, which are all good and well, I still feel to some extent they're also lagging behind some of the frameworks and policies that we actually need to have in place. And this is where the collaborative component comes into play, where the actual platform owners and organizations and data scientists, the people that are actually involved in creating these algorithms, need to have more of a voice in the policies and frameworks that need to actually regulate, particularly the ethics behind a lot of these algorithms. And I think lastly, to Manoj's point, is there's no such thing as neutral data. There's also no such thing as neutral technology, because data and technology is created by humans. And as we know, humans are not neutral. Humans are very flawed. So bias in, you're going to get bias out. Same thing as garbage in from a data quality perspective, you're then going to get garbage out, right? So it actually then is also very important that from a data quality perspective, we ensure that we create a lot of diversity in the teams that actually create these AI systems. 11% of the world's data analytics population that actually create algorithms are only male teams. So already that gives you a bias where gender is actually concerned. And then 67% of all data, of all AI algorithms and models are actually built by non-people of color. So then there's also an issue with regards to what they call techno-racism that is actually intrinsically inputted within those algorithms. And then at the back of this is what they call algorithmic apartheid, which then speaks to the segregation of the global south, where a lot of our data is actually not online. It does not form part of the data sets that the global north actually then own, create, train, and actually then implement.